Thanks, Nakaviva. Thank you, Tino and Eve, for your great intervention. Totally agree with whatever has been shared. Quickly, I'm Ilaisa Kauyaca. I'm from Ragraki Ale Kandavu and I share maternity links in Sarawanga, Bua. It's been a great pleasure to be in this space and share about the struggles that we young people face in our own countries, but also across the region. Briefly, I just want to be honest. I would love to share the story from my personal, then I'll go out how it's being connected to the political lens, and always being agree with the fact that personal is political and political is personal. And I remember growing up as a young kid, a lot of my family and friends would say, "Don't engage in politics because it's dirty, it's bad." But guess what? Growing up as a young activist, I then realized that, every political stuff that happens in every parliament, that you have the power to vote for them to sit in those political spaces, it influences how we move in our personal lives. And yeah, for us to think about it, why do you think they talk about poverty and school infrastructures and hospitals in those political spaces? Because it does have a ripple effect when it comes down to our personal lives. So for me, I strongly believe and agree to the fact that every political is personal and personal is political. And to think in the deeper sense, we also have the power as political, personal people to shift the political arena and the narrative because we have the power to vote for them in and also out of the parliament, because we choose to have our ladies in those decision-making spaces. Growing up as a young indigenous young man in a religious family that is dominated by men and very patriarchal and heteronormative, it was really hard for me to really mean and be authentic. I'll be honest, it took me time and years, even in high school or uni, to be really discreet of who I am as, a gay, queer young man, but also could maneuver around with my femininity and masculinity side of me. Also at the same time, I would say growing up, it's a really challenging experiences because you have to maneuver around the elders respectfully, but also in the respective faith and religion that we belong into. And I later on self-identified myself as a truth seeker, where I really need to find what is the truth. If this is what it is at the present, how do I go back to the origin and how it started and how it's being evolved in terms of history that is brought up to the current present as we speak. And I've really found out that, many of the root causes of the social issues that we face, whether it's climate change, whether it's, drugs, or the discrimination that is happening around us, the harm and the hurt, it's rooted through the colonialism that we encountered. It's rooted through patriarchy, it's rooted through neoliberal capitalism, because it's all connected and everything's interlinked with each other, from our body and how it goes out, to nature, to the ecological. For us in Fiji, we said, our land and ocean is our identity. Our Vanua and Wasawasa, we are, interlinked, interconnected, and we represent each other. And we are codependent of each other because it's our identity. But also at the same time, we like to talk about how we really connected to Vanua when we know our land is suffering, when we know that we've experienced climate change, and what can we do as indigenous people to retrieve back, the change of land, the change of fertility, the change of the ocean, the fish stocks and everything. So those were some of the things that were rambling around my mind growing up as a young person. But now, sitting in a space where I reflect back, one of the things that I would be so grateful for is the social movement that has been happening for so many years, for our elders that have fought for indigenous rights, that have fought for us to make decisions for ourselves, for our land, for our people, but particularly with our body, which is something that we like to really address. How do you really make choices of your body? How do you live authentically to be real and be honest? Be I want to move like this. I like this kind of person. I love to live this kind of way, So that is something that I feel like that should really be strengthened, how we live in a society, in a space that is kind, that is loving, that does not cause any harm, that really, confront the issues when it's right in front of you, whether it's a power trip of patriarchy, a power over you, because God created us as equal and he gave us, resources as equal. But I feel also as human nature with the ego men took over in the sense they could take care of everything, they'll change the narrative. And it became more patriarchal in the society we live in. But if we think about, the regional context, there's certain countries like Palau that is matriarchal, that women are also leaders that are recognized, upheld in terms of the values that they bring in, but also as like the skills as they embodied it, as like natural nurturers that comes in. Um, which is something that we really, really need to engage more with, but also, withhold. And I, for a while, would disagree at the fact that, like, the gender equality is a new concept that are coming in for women to, like, fight for, because I strongly feel that it's not a foreign concept that women are fight for. It is bound to be happening because these are the forces, these are the power that are forcefully taken away from women at the very early stages of colonialism. And now it's a time for women to reclaim back. And I think it's not a foreign concept. It's a natural inbuilt, that femininity and masculinity that is inbuilt with the person as an individual. So we just wanted to share across that. Moreover, if we look at the root causes in terms of like patriarchy, liberal capitalism, it clearly happens right under our nose and our eyes in our lens. When we talk about neoliberal capitalism, how do we really allow foreigners coming into our investors that are coming into our land and areas that take ownership of our lands, they take ownership of how things should move, but also at the same time, it puts us indigenous people in so much risk when we talk about we losing our Vanoa as an identity, our ocean as an identity, because we look around, there's a lot of investments, but also at the same time, it lacks to really, acknowledge indigenous people and what is meant for indigenous people. But also for us, because of the era that we are right now, the coloniality era, there's so many things that happened in the past, but also at the same time, recognizing the social movement, there's a lot of, decolonizing learning that I would personally say that I had to do at a very young age, that even till now, the struggle is still similar and it's still there. And I'm grateful that we have young people in this space where we've been really, being woke from this coloniality slumber because even at times I remember growing up, colonialism have taught me in the sense, and also, internalized in the sense that I see white people as this, but I do not see them as this, as equal, as human, that we treat each other with love and respect and value. But it's otherwise, we see them as higher, superior than us because that's how they want us to feel. That's how they want us to think, that they are stronger, that they are more superior, but actually it's no. So being in the social movement had really, encouraged me to like, wait, take a step back, rethink, unlearn, relearn. And I feel like that's something we really need to work on in Fiji, in terms of how do we slowly decolonize how we think and how we move, and how do we unlearn, relearn, learn again, and maneuver ourselves around in spaces where we dismantle these root causes of, the injustices, the struggles that we face in Fiji. Because I strongly believe that everyone are equal, are like so equal, that we have to live in kind and love and being authentic without fear, without barriers, that it could be you and be real with each other, Yes, I think one of the things that I would like to highlight is like the work of young people that are doing across the region. A big shout out to the ICG opinion, the students that took up this very bold action up to the International Court of Justice, that we see as a good win for us in the Pacific for, pushing for climate change as a human rights violation. And for now, for people that have been working in the space, it's a big win, but also at the same time, how do we continue to push that it comes to be, practical and operational for every countries that they, live up to the commitment that they have done under the Paris Agreement. So that is one of the biggest things that, young people are doing in the region, but also how do we push for decoloniality and really indigenizing ourselves? So when we talk about, the Sojis Act, we've always been existed way before coloniality came, way before Christianity, and respectfully, every religion that came into our region, we've always been there. But the thing that frustrates me, but also moving the sense why how do I transform the frustration is how do we re-indigenize ourselves? How do we claim back, knowing very well the audacity that the colonizer had to coming into our region to change our history, the narrative of our history, And that is something that we should be like, radical about, because it was done unlawfully and it was done by force. And you have to, at the very young age as well, growing up, I was doing a lot of research and, eager to know the truth about the history of Fiji, particularly. And when I knew about it and, connected to other regions, when we talk about, Kanaki, when we talk about the North Pacific, Palau, North Mariana, there's a lot of like colonialism that is happening as we speak. But for us in Fiji, we at the result of colonialism, we in the result of coloniality, the era of coloniality. So as we're talking about the struggles in the Pacific, we should also like pinpoint and confront these actions that are coming towards us in terms of colonialism, how foreign countries are coming in terms of France in Kanaki, in terms of Indonesia coming into West Papua, and other investments that are coming into our country. Even in Fiji, there's so many countries that are trying to come in, use the resources to make investments. But at the same time, how can we be real and honest with them and be like, okay, if you want to come in, how do you make sure you don't harm our land because it's our identity? How do you ensure that it does not harm the ocean because it's for stock for later future generations? So these are some of the questions and push that we should be making, considering the history that we've had and where we're moving towards right now. And I feel like there's a peace leaders meeting coming up next month, and there's already geopolitics happening around there in terms of like who comes in, who doesn't. So for us, if we really want to make choices for ourselves, it's also about how do we talk about the fair struggle that we all face in the Pacific region, and how do we wrinkle down to our personal life and to make sure that you live in free with love and kindness and be authentic, and that is living away from all of the struggles, and for us to also confront these root causes when we talk about colonialism, neoliberal capitalism, heteronormative norms that are causing more harm and hurt, particularly for women and gender non-binary people, and even disability. So with that being said, a question that I could just leave is, if we really talk about leaving no one behind, how really inclusive are we with the work? That we do not work in silos because our social issues are interlinked, interconnected, and intersectional, and so must be our approach. Confronting these issues should be also be interlinked, interconnected, and be intersectional, but also intergenerational. Thank you. And I think I would also like to acknowledge how intergenerational this space is, Naka.